There we go. When I first arrived in Bali in the 11th grade, I wanted to fulfill my lifelong dream of learning how to surf. So my second day on the island, I went down to the beach, I rented a board, and I paddled out. On the first paddle, I picked up a plastic bag. On the second paddle, I picked up a Pocari Sweat. And on the third, an aqua bottle. I immediately knew that this was not the paradise I was expecting. As I spent more time on the island, I began to meet the people, learn the language, and see how beautiful Bali really is. I came to the realization that the pollution of this island is at the fault of Western culture, my culture. Traditional Balinese culture uses banana leaves for packaging, and it didn't start using plastic until it was introduced by Westerners. Now, every day when I went surfing, I was no longer just disgusted by how gross the plastic in the water was. I felt guilty for it being there and angry that such a pure culture had been corrupted in this way. So I started at the Green School, and I think like many of us, I came to the school in order to chase the feeling of being one of the good guys in climate change. I felt guilty knowing that I was a part of the consumerism that was destroying the world, and I wanted to do something to change that. Ironically, when I came to the Green School, exactly the opposite happened. I began to feel worse as I learned more about how bad climate change is and how hard it is to be truly sustainable. I learned that most of us, even in the greenest community, the Green School community, don't live sustainably. Most families here take plane flights multiple times a year, mine included, and let's be honest, most of them use plastic too. It's almost unavoidable in today's world. This made me realize that for my Greenstone, I wanted to do a project which actually negated my carbon impact on the world rather than just satisfying my guilty conscience. So I began taking classes at the Green School, and it reinforced in my head how bad I already knew the plastic on the beach was. According to the United Nations Environment Program, 95% of the waste on the beach, in the ocean, and on the seafloor is plastic. This plastic not only releases carbon as it degrades over time, it's contributing to the acidification of the oceans, which is killing reefs worldwide. It also affects our economy and personal health on a daily basis. Fish in the ocean are becoming more and more sparse, and the ones which still are being caught often have plastic in them, which brings into question how safe they really are to eat. All this new information brought me to one conclusion. I wanted my Greenstone to be a project which did three things. It cleaned up the trash on the beach, helped reduce carbon emissions from the burning of oil to create plastic, and most importantly, helped to undo the negative effects that Western culture has had on Bali. So before I tell you about my project, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Ever since I was little, I've had a fascination with technology, business, but most of all, machines. When I was 13, I got a job working on a boat, and I saved up every penny I had until I was 15 to buy a car with my brother before I could even drive it. Ever since then, I've been trading stocks on the stock market with whatever little money I had, and I knew that if I wanted to make a big change in today's world, I had to work in a field that I was passionate about. So I began to research, and I happened upon a technology called plastic pyrolysis. Plastic pyrolysis is the process of turning plastic into syngas. This technology has actually existed for over 100 years and is used all over the world. However, it's usually done very unsustainably. Essentially how it works is the plastic's put in a closed chamber where it's heated to an extremely high temperature where it gasifies. This gas is known as syngas, or synthetic gas, and it can be used to create extremely clean diesel, jet fuel, petrol, and even electricity. While many countries around the world, including America and Australia, do this on a large scale, they actually don't pyrolyze the plastic because they do it at such a low temperature, it just burns. When you burn plastic, it releases carbon into the air, even if they say it's green. The potential for this technology is amazing, and it fit the problem that I was trying to solve here in Bali. Essentially, if we can redefine the public's image of plastic, we can turn it into a resource for them, which will help keep it off the beach. If people are motivated to keep their plastic because it has value, they won't throw it in the river. This brought me to asks a very important question. You wouldn't throw a can of petrol in the river, so why are we throwing our plastic in it? Essentially, by creating a plastic pyrolysis facility, you can monetize the waste on the beach, which has the potential to create jobs and reshape the economy. Imagine a world where fishermen were emptying the ocean of plastic instead of fish. So I decided to build a machine. I approached the school and offered up my expertise in the field and said that I wanted to build a machine. They immediately said no, out of fear that I would blow myself up. I knew this was reasonable, and I realized I would need the help from a company who already knew what they were doing. So the school introduced me to Pack Driver, who already had an interest in the technology, and he introduced me to Scott Braithwaite, a green school parent who's been doing business between Australia and Indonesia for many years. With Scott's experience and knowledge, we reached out to a Dutch company who had already built multiple facilities in Southeast Asia. Lucky enough for us, their CEO was already in Bali, and we set up a meeting. The meeting went really well, and by the end of it, we signed an NDA solidifying that Green School would be helping them create their first plastic pyrolysis facility in Bali. First, we had to answer some really big questions. The company told us their smallest machine was around 12 million US dollars, that they could help us finance half of that. So we didn't really know what to do here. We didn't know if the money would come from the government, if it would come from private investors, possibly even at the Green School, or if it would come from one private company, like a hotel or a business who just wanted to buy a machine for their personal use. We decided the best route would be to present to the community and see what kind of outreach we could get. As I was preparing to present, the company reached out to us and said they only wanted to work with hotels and that would be the best route for us to take, so I switched directives and started reaching out to hotels. As I was reaching out to hotels, I realized how slow big projects that are financially motivated like this really move. I was constantly sending emails and waiting for weeks on end for replies. I realized how small I was in the world of these big corporations. This is when things for me really slowed down. It became obvious that we were not a priority to the company we were working with, as they were dealing with projects like this on a daily basis, and we were one of their smallest partners. This was the first of many important lessons for me, and as I had to learn the hard way, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I kept on pushing, trying to make the connections that I needed to get a hotel to commit to buying a facility, but before I knew it, people had started dropping out on me. They stopped responding to my emails, and I looked up and I only had 4 months left in the year. My connection to the school dropped through, and I was stuck in a real kerfuffle. This is when I asked myself, what now? From this process, I learned a lot about business and sustainability, but most importantly, I learned that working with large corporations who only think in terms of financial gain was going to require a lot more expertise and time than I already had. I came to the realization that for the past 4 months, I had been working and thinking only in terms of business transactions. I'd forgotten completely about the Balinese people and the environment, which is why I initially started my project. I was incredibly frustrated that I had been so naive and that I had forgotten my values when I started. So I wanted to start anew and do a project which was in line with what I initially wanted to do. Then, through the school, I was introduced to Sabrina Vitasari from Nusa Centaura. Nusa Centaura is a Finnish company which specializes in the transfer of innovative, sustainable technology to communities who are in dire need of it, not to big businesses who want it to make money. I felt a rush of relief in knowing that I would be working with a company who shared my values and wanted to build communities up from the bottom and support them rather than the hotel owners and the corporations who are destroying our world. So we hit it off in conversation, and I asked her, why don't we build one of these facilities at the Green School? We began to look at the issues dealing with the government. There's a lot of laws around sustainable technology. We began to look at issues with dealing with selling the gas or electricity that was created to PLN, who pretty much have a monopoly over Indonesia. And for a second, it seemed like Green School would be the perfect home for a plastic pyrolysis machine. So I went back to the school with a new proposition. Instead of building a machine myself, we invest in having a foreign company who knows what they're doing build one for us. The investment would pay itself off in a couple of years, and it would open up the school in many different ways. It could help the local community and its students through teaching them about technology and also through the monetization of trash. I saw this as a project much like the Vortex, but with a much bigger potential to help the environment and the local community. Sadly, the school said no, at least for now. It would be too much of an investment of time and resources, and I understood that as I only had a couple months left in Bali. So I went back to Scott, and I introduced him to Nusa Sentara. This was about 2 months ago. As of right now, we have a recycling facility in Temesi, Genyar, who are incredibly interested in the project and have the right amount of plastic at a reasonable price. Just a couple days ago, Scott made a trip to Thailand to see one of the existing facilities already, and it went incredibly well. We also have a connection with the Chengu Banjar, who are incredibly interested in the project and have a piece of land allocated for waste treatment which isn't being used yet. We hope that this will be the first home to a plastic pyrolysis facility in Bali. As of right now, for me, I don't know what my path will be continuing in this project, but I know no matter where I go, I'll continue working and doing everything I can to make sure these get built everywhere. This technology is truly amazing and inspiring, and hopefully next year I'll be able to stay involved in the project and help Scott sell these machines. Through this process, I've learned how much work and effort it takes to make to make a big change in the world. Because of this effort and risk, our community has learned to shy away from big projects like this. In terms of carbon emissions, we simply are not doing enough. We've learned to satisfy ourselves through small projects which are good intentioned and really cool, but are not making the change that the world needs. One thing that's bothered me throughout this whole project is how the Green School doesn't push big projects like this very often. We're a school of immense wealth and influence, and the potential we could make in the world is amazing. To truly create the global sustainable leaders of the future, we need to start pushing bigger projects on our kids and empowering them to make change. Rather than always settling for the "I built an electric bike" project. Those are an amazing starting point, but they have to lead to somewhere bigger. I hope in the future the Green School takes on more projects like this, because we are the example the world is looking to when it comes to climate change and green leadership. And with that, we have the potential to change the world. So lastly, if you want to get involved in this project, because it's still going, you can reach out to wasteenergybali@gmail.com and help out in any way you can. Thanks.